Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 2021 CEDA annual meeting. To get things started, I would like to introduce Erin Sparks from Great River Energy. Erin, in addition to being part of a great organization at Great River, also now sits on our CEDA board, and she would like to share a few words of welcome with everyone this morning. Take it away, Erin.
Thank you, Chris. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Well, my name is Erin Sparks, like Chris said, and I am an economic development lead with Great River Energy. For those of you who aren't familiar with Great River Energy, we're a not-for-profit wholesale electric cooperative, which provides electricity to 28 member-owner distribution cooperatives throughout the state of Minnesota. And we are happy to be a sponsor of today's event. We're a proud supporter of the CEDA organization. We support CEDA because of the quality economic development services they provide. We have worked with a number of their staff on projects and initiatives across our service territory and have always had a great experience. But also because of the work that they do to not only grow and attract business to greater Minnesota, but because of all of the innovative initiatives that they have developed to really support and help make the communities that they serve vibrant and attractive places to live, work, and play. We're all kind of working out there to help grow greater Minnesota and make these spaces more livable, more vibrant, more welcoming. And our investment in CEDA is a simple way that we can really help amplify our impact. So with that, I will turn it back to Chris to help move things along. But thank you for the time this morning, and I look forward to the rest of the program.
Those of you that have been friends of CEDA long enough know that in addition, before she became a rock star for Great River Energy, Erin was also a team member here at CEDA. So she knows the organization inside and out, and we appreciate your support as always. Couple of logistic things before we get going. Normally, if we were in person, I have to say where the restrooms are and stuff like that. We don't have to worry about that, but they are just across the hall for me. If you guys want to drive here and use them during the meeting, that's fine. Want to go through and thank some of our sponsors this morning. As you heard from Erin, Great River Energy and Prairie Island Indian Community are our event sponsors this morning. Our supporting sponsors are Cabin Coffee, Darylin Power and its member cooperatives, RSP Architects, SCH Engineering, the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, and Think Bank. Thank you for all of those folks for making this meeting possible and allowing us to continue to do what we do across rural communities. Couple other logistic things. For those of you that registered with your mailing address, you should either have received or be receiving a little surprise in the mail from our friends at Cabin Coffee. If you've already received it and you brewed it this morning to wake yourself up for this great meeting, we appreciate it. Thanks again to those folks at Cabin Coffee for that little treat. It's greatly appreciated. As we go through the presentations today, there'll be a number of documents that are referred to and presented. And never fear, those documents will remain in the meeting app after the meeting is over for the next 6 months. So if you've printed them or you print them and you misplace them, for the next 6 months, you can go back to this meeting app through Whova, which this is our first time using that technology. I think it's part of our teams here challenge to me every year to just switch the technology up just a little bit to see if I can keep up on learning how to present on a new platform every year. But the nice thing about, one of the many nice things about the Whova app is it allows us to keep those documents out there for you guys to access for the next 6 months. After that, you'll be able to contact our staff directly and we'll be able to get those to you as well. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our president and CEO, Ron Ziegler, to give his annual State of the Organization address.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, and thank you for taking the time to be part of this meeting. Your support of CEDA and your interest in CEDA is greatly appreciated once again. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of a person, Terry Erickson, that is very near and dear to the foundation of this organization. Terry passed away earlier this week from injuries sustained in a freak bike accident last week. 35 years ago, Terry was the founding executive director of a firm called the Southeastern Minnesota Development Corporation, which today is called Community and Economic Development Associates. Yes, Terry created what we know today as CEDA. If it weren't for Terry Erickson, none of us would be here today celebrating the great accomplishments that this company has brought forth. If you would be so kind to join me with a moment of silence in honor of Terry. Terry, thank you for all that you've done for this company, for your work in the cities that you have since represented, and for the work that you have done for this region. You will be greatly missed, and may you rest in peace. At the time of his passing, Terry was representing the La Crescent EDA and was working with CEDA team members serving Houston County in the creation of what is called Keep Company Co-working Space. It is a partnership between the La Crescent Chamber of Commerce, City of La Crescent EDA, and the Houston County EDA. The co-working space will serve all of Houston County. This is a great project, and in honor of Terry, CEDA will be providing a donation to this project. I am sure that Terry would love this much more than he would love flowers or anything else. Terry was a very humble man and would not want this recognition. I can just hear him saying, "Good God, Ron, move on." He would encourage us to move forward and live life to its fullest. So with that thought, we move forward with our meeting. For those of you that have attended past meetings, you know how we typically have a great lunch after the meeting, and those that wish to go play golf at a nearby course while others enjoy other activities. I look forward to that happening again in 2022. I do want to tell you that we are looking at the opportunity for all of us that wish to get together for a day of golf this summer at some point. More details will be forthcoming on that at a future time. I want to thank Joya Stetson and Chris Gassner for putting this annual meeting together. The decision to host this meeting virtually again this year was made a long time ago, long before all of us were vaccinated and knew that we could meet in person. As you can imagine, there's an incredible amount of time and effort that is put into these events, but I do want to thank Joya and Chris especially for putting this together. Joya and Chris have a wonderful meeting planned. I'm excited for our team to share with you some of the important projects that we're working on. I'm also excited for the breakout sessions that are available this afternoon. In the very near future, we'll be releasing our annual report that will provide you with additional information as to the happenings from our team, our communities and counties, and our contract holders. You will easily see the depth of the CEDA organization. I also, like Chris did, want to thank the financial sponsors of this meeting. Our event sponsors are Great River Energy and the Prairie Island Indian Tribal Council. Supporting sponsors include Think Bank, RSP Architects, Dairyland Power, Short Elliott Hendrickson, Cabin Coffee, and the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. Your support of our organization is greatly appreciated. I am very proud to be before you for the 17th time. It is an exciting time for CEDA. We now have the most contracts we have ever had. We are providing the most services that we have ever provided. We have the largest team assembled that we have ever had, and I'm proud to say that we have the strongest team assembled that CEDA has ever had. Some could argue that bigger isn't always better. In the case of CEDA, controlled, sustained growth has provided numerous opportunities for rural communities and counties that otherwise wouldn't have a chance or a swing at the plate. We are grateful for the support that each and every one of you provides to CEDA. I am very proud to state that we are a strong organization that is moving the needle in rural America and in the upper Midwest. It wasn't long ago that we were at a point at a time in the pandemic where we didn't know what the future would hold. We didn't know where governmental bodies, what the new norm would be for them. We didn't know where businesses up and down Main Street, commercial areas, industrial parks would be adapting to and in different ways to try and survive. I don't know that there are any specific answers to those thoughts as of yet, but it seems like things are moving forward and we're glad to be part of that. This past year and a half have been a struggle for all of us. During this same time, even through the struggle, CEDA has remained strong and growing. We have consistently been available for our contracts, our communities, and our businesses. We have continued our company thought of finding ways to do things rather than ways to not do things. We try to say yes rather than no. We are a ray of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, a sense of optimism through these times, and we will continue to be so long into the future. We have been here during these times. If it's for a business owner to run an idea past us, a sympathetic ear to listen, or for a shoulder to cry on, we have been here. And I am so very proud of our team, especially during these times. I want to say thank you to our team members for all that they have done. CEDA continues because of our team and the passion they have for rural America. Every team member, from the ones that have been with us for years to the most recent hires, have stepped up without hesitation, without request for additional compensation, without complaining about this, that, or the other thing. And for that, I am very grateful. In reading through last year's comments that I put together, I noticed that last May, I commented that we had 3 new hires to make our team member count to be 30 at that time. Today, due to the contract and services expansion, we now have 38 professional team members doing the great work of CEDA. All CEDA team member contact information and bios are on the CEDA website, and invite you to the website to review this information. The CEDA team is comprised of not only people that are passionate for rural America, but passionate about helping in any way they can. I believe we have assembled a very strong professional team. We have had one recent retirement. Donna Mack retired after 5 years of service to her communities in CEDA. We thank Donna for all the great projects that she has accomplished, and we wish her the best in her retirement. Donna, job well done. Even through the pandemic, CEDA has had an amazing year in 2020 and continue to do so in the first half of 2021. As I mentioned, we have increased our number of team members. We have also expanded our services. It is hoped the rest of 2021 and 2022 will bring back the opportunities for our marketing department with Joy and Chris to continue the expansion possibilities and to restart the best practices visits that have been so highly successful and have brought forth options and thoughts that can be utilized in our communities. In addition to our marketing department, we have our government relations department led by Chris Geeson. Chris has established relationships with elected and appointed officials at the local, state, and federal levels. If you're in need of reaching out for assistance with or from these people, don't hesitate to contact Chris for his assistance. The grant department with Courtney Burgee Swanson, Allison Wagner, and Abby Wright continues to flourish during these times. These 3 have been very successful in having their authored grant applications be awarded. In 2020, CEDA authored some 20 successfully funded grant applications that amounted to over $4.1 million coming to organizations and projects that we are affiliated with. Their success has been phenomenal. Even if you're not part of a CEDA contracted community, the CEDA grant department can assist you on a per project basis to author a grant application. Feel free to contact any one of these 3 for further discussions. CEDA has established a planning department. Matt Durand of the CEDA team is working diligently on housing studies, comprehensive plans, strategic planning, and land use plans. We offer a very competitive, easy to understand process and deliverable to assist in creating a roadmap for your future. If you have an interest in anything planning related, please feel free to contact Matt. Through a contract with the South Central Service Cooperative, we have expanded into assisting in the workforce development area and the relationship with the local school systems. Emily Davis is involved in this program for the CEDA team, is doing great things in this program, and we look to expand this in the future. Through the efforts of CEDA team member Courtney Burgee Swanson, we received a grant from the state of Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development to create what we call HEN, which stands for the Harvest Entrepreneurial Network. Through HEN, CEDA's professional staff did provide free individualized coaching to cohorts of rural partners and entrepreneurs, and to develop a series of workshops aimed to educate, connect, and support businesses in greater Minnesota. We are winding down phase 1 of this project, and Haver will successfully meet each and every aspect of the grant. We are looking at ways and partners to keep this project moving forward as we think it is vital for the success of rural America. CEDA also provided countless hours of time for administering many pandemic-related grant programs. You will hear about that in a bit. We provided countless hours of business and nonprofit counseling, and we were a great source for technical assistance during this time. We do continue as a satellite office of the Small Business Development Center in Rochester. In 2020, we assisted 32 businesses with 117 hours of counseling. CEDA's proprietary market intelligence dashboard is an exciting new project that had funding assistance from the Otto Bremer Trust. We look forward to utilizing this important piece of research in many instances for our CEDA communities, counties, and businesses. CEDA is in the process of completing a strategic planning exercise for our own company. George Brophy, a great friend of CEDA for a lot of years, is leading this effort. We are excited to move this forward. The success of CEDA is not the bottom line financials. It is the projects that are completed with the assistance of many communities, counties, and organizations. Yes, we need to be aware of our bottom line, but we also consider grant dollars that we bring into communities, businesses assisted, jobs created, storefronts filled, quality of life things, and the like when we look at how successful we are in any given year. There are many other things that we do. If you have any thoughts or ideas, questions, comments, feel free to contact me and we can discuss those at any point. I want to take a moment to thank our communities, counties, and organizations that contract services with CEDA. We have many different organizations that we do contract with, and all of you have been through a lot over the past few months, and you have, without hesitation, supported the decisions that we have had to make as CEDA and you for the best way to continue the ways to support you, your internal boards, your citizens, and your businesses. There hasn't been one instance that I can remember where criticisms have risen as to why something is being done or not being done. Your continued support of CEDA and our team is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to continuing to work with you through these times and on into the rest of 2021 and beyond. Thank you for your confidence in CEDA. I would like to take a moment to introduce our board of directors. It's a little different how you introduce them through a virtual meeting, so I'll just say their names and we can talk more if you wish to. Michael Toohey is our chair. Larry Anderson is our vice chair. Bill Roy is our treasurer. Gary Gooder is a secretary. Brian Crambier is a director. Dwayne Lee is a director. Rich Bodensteiner is a director. Becca Sell is a director. Aaron Sparks is a director. And Mayor Jimmy John King is a director. The board serves without any compensation per diem or the like. They serve because of the passion they have for doing what they can for rural America. Thank you for your time, commitments, and willingness to volunteer for the board. It is appreciated. In 2020, CEDA created the CEDA Emeritus Board for past board members to continue to being affiliated with CEDA, but in a less demanding way. It is great to have their input and support. Members of the Emeritus and board include Mike Toohey, Dave Gruey, Elaine Gary, Steve Kramer, Mark McGrory, Rob Wolfington, Jim Hoynes, Mike Jones, and Jay Wangen. Thank you for considering and being part of the CEDA family into the future. I also want to take a moment to thank our investors. Without your confidence in our organization, there is no way we could function as efficiently and effectively as possible. Our diamond level investors is the Otto Bremer Trust and Ascentech. Platinum level investment is Compeer Financial. Gold level investment is Dairyland Power, People's Energy Cooperative, ITC Midwest, TUI Corporation, and the Community Venture Network. The silver level investment includes Bremer Bank, CUSB, F&M Community Bank, First Southeast Bank, Great River Energy, Hawkins Ash CPAs, Merchants Bank, My Energy Cooperative, Minnesota Business Finance Corporation, Mississippi Welder Supply, Prairie Island Indian Tribal Council, Root River State Bank, Southeast Minnesota 504 Development Corporation, Steel Waseca Cooperative Electric. And the bronze level of investors include Illumline, BevCom, Cresco Bank and Trust, First Farmers and Merchants, First National Bank, Foresight Bank, Midwest Bank, Cracker Jack Marketing, RSP Architects, Rushford State Bank, Short Elliott Hendrickson, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, and Think Mutual Bank. We do have other smaller investors that fund us on a per project basis, and we thank those as well. It's all about relationships, and I am so thankful the relationships that CEDA has made and continues to make. As you will remember, CEDA is a nonprofit agency. We are unique in the fact that we are self-sustaining. Our existence has limited reliance upon state allocations or foundation gifts. 90% of our budget comes from the services we provide. If we don't do good work, we're out the door, which we should be. CEDA is blessed to have good people working for it, good people on the board directing it, a network of good people to collaborate with, good people that invest in us, and good people that we contract with. Together, we continue to make good things happen. I am very biased when it comes to CEDA. I do believe we have an awesome team of professional, hardworking, committed individuals. We have a board that allows the team members to move forward with a vision. We have investors that believe in what we do and how we do it. And we have contract holders that see the benefit of the success we bring, the support from all the team, and the relationships we build. After what all of us have been through over the last few months, I believe that CEDA is needed now more than ever before. We will continue to bring forth thoughts and ideas. We will continue to work closely with local officials and staff, and we will continue to work with businesses during these trying times. We will continue to be the ray of hope. I do believe that together anything can and will happen. I do look forward to the day that we can all be together and present this annual meeting to you in person once again. The future, no one knows what the future holds. The death of Terry Erickson confirms that fact. Life is too short and must be lived to its fullest. Simply put, prosperity and growth are not accidental. They're products of talented, creative, forward-thinking people who are willing to step to the forefront and assume the risks and responsibilities and, quite frankly, the obligation of leadership. CEDA is here, we are ready, and we are willing to accept the obligation of leadership. On behalf of our team members and our board, I thank you for your support and your confidence in our organization. We look forward to working with you and for you as we move forward with a passion for rural America. Thank you for everything that you do. Back to Chris.
Thanks for that, Ron. Like Ron mentioned, we can't wait to get this meeting back in person and have you join us. Wish you could join us here at our corporate offices in Phoenix, Arizona. Or wait, no, my producers are telling me we're still in Chatfield, Minnesota. But if they've been outside up here in the upper Midwest for the last week or so, that might be confusing to some people. I actually saw my neighbor burst into flames when he was doing some yard work yesterday. It's hot. But that's a great way, it's probably why we're doing this virtually again this year, right? Is because, all of us getting together in one of those great barn wedding venues and getting to chat, we would be roasting as good upper Midwest folks that we are. So it is a blessing in disguise. We are about to hear some great presentations from several of our communities, some really innovative projects that our team is working on, like Ron said, to continue to move the needle in our rural communities and move things forward with new and innovative approaches to doing that. We're really excited to have 5 great presentations for you today. And one of the things that we miss out on in doing this virtually and not in person that we are using this new platform in order to incorporate is the after session networking and also the ability to really be more interactive with our presenters. I think at each of the annual meetings, since we started using this format and having some of our team members present on some of the cool projects that they're working on, that's been what our attendees have really enjoyed, is after the meeting, the presentations are over, they can walk up and talk to our staff members about those projects, get some more in-depth details about those projects and get some answers to some questions that maybe were sparked during that discussion. So with that in mind, as you notice on your agenda, and like we have mentioned, In addition to the presentations that you'll hear momentarily, we have scheduled some breakout sessions after our annual meeting portion is completed. They'll begin about 12:15 and they'll happen every half an hour after that. And there's one scheduled for each of our presentations that you will be hearing in a minute. It's a great way to jump in. You can network with the other folks that have an interest in that topic, just like you do, and also get the questions answered that are created after hearing about this great work that our team is doing. So on your agenda in the Whova app, you'll see direct links to each of the optional breakout sessions after the meeting is over. Each of them is a separate Zoom meeting. Again, they'll be a little bit more interactive than this one, where you're just stuck listening to me right now. So we had to set them up kind of separately. And so they don't run one into the next. You'll have to click on each of the meetings as you want to join it. So if you have any questions, again, we know technology is not only new to us, but it's also new to all of you. We do have team members here that are monitoring the phone here at the office or the chat. And if you do run into issues, please let us know and we'll help get you in the spot that you want to be in to participate in. So with that, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Sarah Carling, who works with Itasca Economic Development Corporation in Itasca, Minnesota, in Itasca County, Minnesota. And Sarah's going to talk about a great program that she's been implementing up in the North Country there around brainstorming with our rural communities to help them kind of prioritize some of the projects and some of the programs that they hope to move forward. So with that, Sarah, welcome to the meeting.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to just get my presentation here set up and then we will be good to go. All right. So as Chris mentioned, my name is Sarah Carling and I actually work with Itasca County as a partner with IEDC. I've been in this contract since 2019 where I support approximately 16 rural communities. And to date, I've done 24 brainstorm sessions and counting throughout 15 of those communities. We're here to talk about brainstorming, and I think it's really important to understand why brainstorming can be influential in your communities. And that's, it allows people to think freely. It encourages ongoing collaboration. It allows more creativity and out-of-the-box thinking that we all need. It assists in finding solutions to problems that you might be having in your community, as well as it might also help to identify new community champions. One thing that I've noticed in the communities that I've been working with is that it's the same 5 people at the table, and it's trying to encourage other people to step up and help with the projects that we are working on and working towards. So items to consider when facilitating a brainstorm session. You want to encourage participants to think of as many ideas as possible. Think of quantity versus quality at that point. We can figure out the quality once we have the quantity. And then it's also to encourage those crazy out of the box, this would never happen here idea. The bigger the ideas, the better. The crazier ideas, the better. You can always streamline things down. Things you may want to also avoid are, and this is more for the facilitator side, is the personal opinions and biases while facilitating the meeting. You want to try and stay neutral. However, you can guide with broad strokes of ideas or questions to generate thought. So an example would be if somebody were to say, we need more community events. That's a great idea, but it's when you went to go start we're going to start working on community events, you're starting from ground zero. Whereas in that brainstorm session, you can capitalize on the audience and that brainstorming juices that are flowing and ask questions that are more strategic. So asking—
Sarah?
Yes.
I think you need to share your screen. We can't see
Can you
your
not see it?
Nope.
Oh, that's weird. Hold on. Well, let's start over. Can you see my screen now?
I think it's your desktop.
Okay, so hold on. How embarrassing.
It's new technology, right? We're all working through it. I got your
No.
presentation now. I see it.
Perfect. I'm just going to jump through a couple of quick slides so we can get back to where we were. So as I was saying, though, you want to avoid that personal opinions and biases and staying neutral to who you are within that presentation. And then you also want to, you can do the broad strokes as I was mentioning and asking those questions. And those questions are more generated to get more in-depth, diving deeper into that. So that example I was using with the community events is, you know, is there a specific age demographic that you're trying to hit at? Is there specific events that they like to participate in that maybe aren't offered in the community, and what would those be? That helps to generate additional ideas that you can start from versus starting from scratch. The other things as far as tips are concerned is to set your ground rules. When you start a brainstorm session, it's good to say, you know, we're here to have fun, we're here to be really creative. However, we need to be respectful of everyone's ideas because we don't want to hinder anyone's creativity. So being very respectful and not having obviously like crude remarks are especially important when trying to generate new ideas. As for the effective brainstorming, these are just a couple of the buckets that we'll be talking about today. So how do we get started? This is how I actually start a brainstorm session with a new community or a new community champion that I haven't yet worked with. So I typically go in, I have a meeting with the mayor or the community champion talking about brainstorming and what they're, you know, wanting out of their community and where they're at currently. And then we establish who those key stakeholders are. And there's a list below that kind of identify who I've worked with in the past. And then we choose a format of the meeting that's going to be best for their community. So that could be in person, online, a survey, some phone calls, or a combination of all of them. And then lastly, what's most important is to promote it like crazy. Through social media, asking your friends to share. So the more people that share it, the more people that see it. And then obviously websites, flyers, door hangers, you know, having that one-to-one personal interaction to talk about it is really a great opportunity to gauge who's going to be participating in that brainstorm session. So some key items to consider is you need to know your audience. You know, what's the best time for them to meet? Is the location in a neutral space? Should the higher ups be included or excluded? There may be some town riff with a mayor or somebody like that, and maybe that's going to deviate some of the brainstorming information that we could obtain. So maybe we exclude them from the general public's meeting so that there's more free flow information coming out of that. You know, what is the voice that you're trying to capture? Are they involved? The example would be, are we trying to capture the youth voice of our community and we're only actually speaking with the parents? Are we actually capturing the youth's voice? What are your desired outcomes and are we achieving those? Is everyone at the table in some capacity? So are we making an effort to reach out to those that may not always be the first at the table? Because sometimes there's folks in our community that may not be the most vocal, but they have some really great ideas. So we need to make sure that we're reaching out to everyone and not just your usual suspects. This is just a list of the materials I typically bring to my in-person brainstorm session. If you'd like to know more about this, I'm happy to talk about it in my breakout. As for topics for leading a brainstorm discussion, these are actually the topics that I use to facilitate my meeting. So the first thing I do is a SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we discuss the economic, commercial, businesses, and residential needs within the community. So that could be anything from blight to new businesses, opportunities that we'd like to see, to if that business only had one more thing, it would be awesome, to housing needs that maybe we have within our community or programs we would like to see offered. And then the city needs and safety, it typically is anything from, man, we don't have a volunteer fire department right now, but it would really be awesome if we did, to we have a really busy intersection and I wish that that could be more of a controlled intersection. To maybe we'd like to see a multi-use trail on a high trafficked corridor to help with public safety. And then there's the Parks and Recreation and Tourism bucket that talks about the amenities that you have within your community and how they're being utilized, how they could better be utilized, as well as what you would like to see. And then also questions around the tourism. So who's coming to a community and what are they utilizing when they're there? And are we getting any feedback of what they'd like to be seeing? And then the last bucket is your other and miscellaneous. I kind of call it the catch-all. So anything that hasn't really found its home in those other 5. This is kind of the catch-all. So we talk about the technology needs, broadband, cell phones, like the cell phone service providers, and then signage. Can you find things within your community based on the signage and where it's taking you? Websites. So is it informative? Is it helpful? Is it providing you the information you need? Social media, do you have it? Do you want it? Which platform? And then communication. And I think this is a great one that I always remember to ask is the folks that are there, how are they getting the communication about the community itself, whether it be events that are going on or things that are going on throughout the city? Because as I mentioned with social media, there are multiple platforms, and I've discovered that through different age demographics, we use different platforms. So we need to, as a community, be mindful of how we're actually getting that information out to our community so that we're effectively communicating what's going on in our area. As for the brainstorming meeting structure, I typically have 3 brainstorm sessions completed in a community. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. It just depends on the community. But typically what it is I'd meet with the students. It's usually 9th through 12th grade and do the brainstorm session as we just discussed, as well as then having a meeting with the business owners and general public, and then wrapping it up with the city council and kind of treating that as a secondary meeting for any general public or business owners that weren't able to meet the second meeting. There are additional groups that I've met with in the past, and you can see that list below. Every community is a little different, so this is just kinds of ebbs and flows based on community need and timing. As for the collecting of the report and reporting of data, this is really important, and this is where all of the hard work from the brainstorm sessions kind of comes to an end. And we actually put all of this information into a report that I've created. It's just I call it the master list report. It's all of the information that was ever collected from any number of the brainstorm sessions all together. It gives a great 30,000-foot view for the community to go back to and look at. And then from there, we also identify 10 projects that we can kind of pull out from those brainstorm sessions. And then I work with the city councils to identify those 10, prioritize those 10, and then from that prioritization, we take that same list of the prioritized list, and then we start to work on identifying grants that are available, maybe it be fundraisers that we need to host in order to make up some of the funding or have some matching funds created. So this is just that master list of the brainstorming information that's collected. I utilize this as a template to input all of that information in those buckets that we just discussed. And then from there, I take those 10 ideas and I put them into a spreadsheet. And this is where we prioritize those and we have some additional information. And from that, on the other side of this spreadsheet, you would have all of the possible project funding that you could use towards that said project. So those are just helpful tools. I want to get into like the action and the follow through. I think this is really important. And if you take anything away from my presentation today, if you do a brainstorm session, it's really vitally important that when you have completed your brainstorm session and you've provided this information back to the community, that there is follow through and there's follow up. One of the things that I've noticed is that if you give them the information, but yet they don't really know how to get started, or they have roadblocks and they don't know who to go to, the projects typically fail. And because of that, it's really great to have a champion like myself when I'm out in the communities is, I'm able to follow up with these projects and telling people, hey, this is where we're at. Okay, well, let's look at this grant. We've got this grant deadline coming down. Who's going to apply? And we're able to facilitate and find the champion for each of those processes to continue the project moving forward. This is just a very brief list of some of the items that have come out of brainstorm sessions as far as projects, and I'm happy to discuss these more in detail during my breakout. But I do want to take some time today to discuss 2 particular projects that are in motion at this time. And this is just kind of I think it's a full picture as far as how brainstorming can actually create a really great project for communities. So The first project I want to talk about is a park expansion. I completed a first impression report for the community, and I had identified that they had a lack of recreational opportunities and needed some upgrades. And then during that, we also did the brainstorm sessions, and through the brainstorm sessions, the community also identified that they needed more recreational opportunities and had a chance for improvements. And then through that, during that time, a tire swing actually broke, and a local child started a lemonade stand where she raised about $500 in a day to help offset the cost of replacing the tire swing. So because of all of these things, I went to the city council and, we discussed this, and we created a park committee. Through the park committee, we have now gone through and created a park expansion based on the information that was obtained through the brainstorm session of needs that they'd like to see within their community that helped us to create this layout. So what you're seeing here, these 3 softball fields already exist, as well as this tennis court, but everything else, including these trails, do not exist today. So we're breaking this $1.7 million project out into phases so that it's more obtainable for a small community. This community is under 1,000 for population. And so because of this, though, this will give this community, as well as the surrounding area, great recreational opportunities to be able to explore all seasons, as it's going to also incorporate a hockey rink. So in northern Minnesota, that's kind of our bloodline. So it's almost like a you must have in order to have in a park. And there's always a shortage of sheets of ice. So with that being said, I'm really excited for this community to have this as an opportunity. And what I will also mention is from this park, this will spur other opportunities within their community. We just need to complete this first, and then there's bigger projects that will also billow off of this in the future. My second project is actually a historical mine tour project. I did 5 brainstorm sessions with 5 communities on the 169 corridor within Itasca County. And 3 things really maintained consistency when I was looking at trends. And that was, we had a strong sense of history and we didn't know how to display our story. We had a lack of visibility or no major draw to our community or to our businesses. And their untapped resources were their mine pits. So with all of those things taken into consideration, that created our regional mine tour. Which today that includes 31 communities over across 4 counties, 40 plus mine locations, both active, inactive, and reclaimed. This will also create new video and photography per community, as well as an interactive map with narratives and video and photography to highlight amenities within the community, and then highlighting up to 15 additional amenities per community. So this is a tourism and an economic project all in one. So this slide here, what you're going to see is these little pinpoints along this map on the upper left-hand corner is just showing the breadth of the project. It goes from Ironton, Minnesota, all the way to Silver Bay, which is near Lake Superior. And then on the far right-hand side, what you're looking at is that red line with all the numbers associated to it is actually the interactive map. So you can click on each of those numbers and you'll receive this narrative, is what we call it, with that image and then that short narrative of what you can expect when you're there. The images, you can actually embed video and images there. So what's great about this map is that it allows people to select areas that they would like to visit prior to visiting the area. So they can go from 4 to 8, and all they need to do is click that navigate here button, and that will give them driving directions specifically to that location. When they arrive at that location, they can then take a look at the interactive, or not interactive, but interpretive sign, where there'll be additional historical information, both about the mining industry in that community, as well as the community as a whole, which will then also have a QR code. So it'll link you back to the map. So if you just happen to be at that mine area and you didn't know about the tour, this helps to link you back to the tour. So I think it's just really important to be able to highlight a couple of these projects to show that, you know, one brainstorm session where this wasn't even something that was on anyone's plate before has now created both regional projects that impact 4 counties and 31 communities, with both an economic driver that's so needed now since COVID, but it also helps to connect our communities and tell our story. So that's just 2 small projects, actually large projects, that have come out of just brainstorming and talking with people and seeing the trends and noticing that there might be gaps that we could actually help facilitate new programs. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry for the kerfuffle in the beginning. But with that, I really do look forward to seeing you at 12:15 to answer any additional questions you might have about brainstorming.
Thanks, Sarah. Kerfuffle. Now that was a word I had not planned to hear today, but I like it. I'm going to try and use it 3 times, maybe not during this meeting, but then that can become a part of my own vocabulary. I like it. Next, we have a presentation from Emily Davis, who works with the South Central Service Cooperative and with a couple of school districts, Blue Earth area schools and United South Central schools, working on workforce development and career opportunities, career navigation type opportunities for them. Emily has, as you can imagine, with the last school year, been forced to be really creative in providing this programming and information. And one of the creative ways that she has come up with to share this information and to engage young people in learning about the possibilities that are available in their area is through the use of podcasting. So with that, let's hear more from Emily Davis.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Chris has said, I am Emily Davis, and I am the Community Workforce Coordinator here in Blue Earth. Let me see here. Oh, there we go. All right. So I'm Emily Davis, like I said. I'm the Community Workforce Coordinator, which is a new position to CEDA in 2020. I started in this role in April of last year, so right in the beginning of the pandemic. And I currently serve Blue Earth area and United South Central schools. So when I started, our goal and my 2 main goals really are to help students explore careers within our area that they may not know exist, and to help them and to encourage them, to return to our area after they've received the training necessary for those careers they like. Now, I knew going into the pandemic that I'd have to get very creative in helping students explore careers because I had spoken to both of the superintendents I work with, and outside presenters were not going to be allowed into our school districts, which is where a podcast came in. So why a podcast? First and foremost, it was COVID safe. I knew that I could do these interviews very easily without having to go into businesses and still produce what I needed to for the students and for the parents in the community. It is free to produce. All that I needed, that I knew, was something to record with and a platform for hosting my podcast. And I knew that those were easily available online just from listening to podcasts myself. Like I said, they're easy to record. All you have to do is have a phone or a recording device, and you should be good to go. They're easy to edit. All of the podcast platforms have editing software within them. And like anything else, the more you use it, the easier it gets. So at first it was a little harder to edit, but as I used it, it's become a lot easier. I could do it in short episodes. I knew that students were already having burnout from virtual classrooms and virtual homework and everything like that. So I knew that I had to keep it short and concise. I also know that teenagers tend to have very short attention spans, and it's very easy to distribute. You click a button, and for most podcasts, they go to multiple platforms. So this is important work, obviously, to encourage students to stay within our area, but also to help them explore careers. It exposes them to careers that they have no clue are even here. It allows them to have insight into different careers, and it answers questions that students may not have even thought about asking. It also helps me form relationships with local businesses. So when I do have the opportunity to allow presenters back into the classroom, it's an easier ask that I already have that relationship already there. It also helps get the information out to parents. A lot of students have listened to this, but it also allows parents to listen to it. So if their student has a question about a career and the parent doesn't know, they can pull this podcast up together and get that information. And it also encourages students to return to our area. They know about the opportunities out there, and time again, when I have surveyed students, we have heard, or I have heard, that there's no job opportunities here. This podcast was a way for me to say, you know what, take a look at this and we can show you that there are multiple opportunities. So to get started on this, there are a few steps that I took. The first one was to research podcast hosting platforms. I knew there were multiple of them. We use the platform Anchor because it is free and because it will host our podcast for an unlimited amount of time for no money. I researched what was needed to record. I have an iPhone, and so I have a voice memo app on my phone that I can use to record it. If I'm doing an interview over the phone, I can just use the recording software through Anchor online and just record that way. I needed to decide on how long the episode needed to be. Knowing that students don't have a great attention span, I keep it to under 10 minutes. I had to create questions. These questions, I use the same, I believe there's 5 for every episode I do. The only one that changes is I have one about a salary where I research ahead of time what the median salary is for that job in our area. And I use the Minnesota Deeds data tools to get that information. I compile a list of professions to interview. This one was really just basic, write down 10, get the ball rolling, and from there I've added more. This has also helped me realize how many professions are within our area. And then I set a day to release the new episode each week so it's consistent. I felt that was needed so that people knew what they were looking for and when it could be published. So the steps that I use to publish an episode, obviously schedule the interview. I try to be very cautious about using professionals' time thoughtfully. So I try to schedule an interview about a week in advance. I record the audio during that interview. Again, it's maybe a 10 to 15 minute interview, does not take a ton of time. I edit the audio then throughout that next week. And that's gone quicker, as I said, as I've used it. I do like to send the episode to the professional that I interviewed to get approval before I publish it, just to make sure that they like everything they've said. They don't want to re-record an answer. And once I get that, then I use the scheduling tool in Anchor to schedule it to publish on Monday morning. And once that's done, I utilize our Blue Earth Rev, which is a group here that helps connect entrepreneurs and students to different resources within the area. I put it on their Facebook page, and then I also send it to schools to forward it along to students, but also to put on their social media pages so that it reaches their target demographic as well. So there are different ways to listen to our Pick Your Path podcast. We currently have it available on 7 different platforms. Anchor, obviously the one I used to record it, but then it's also distributed through Anchor to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Some of the episodes that we currently have, and this is just a few, I've done one with a physician's assistant, a lineman, an electric motor repair tech, and then a farm equipment tech as well. I try to keep the episodes very throughout all different career sections and interesting to a variety of students. And then all you'd have to do within those different podcast platforms is search Pick Your Path, and our episodes are new. I try to do every Monday. Sometimes that just does not work out based on professional schedules, but I try to be consistent with every Monday. So this has helped our community in various ways, especially our students. It's not only allowed us to help explore careers through the pandemic, but it's also helped us continue it throughout summer months. I can't be in front of students in the summer, and neither can professionals, so this is an easy way to just continue that conversation. It allows students to listen to episodes on their own time. A lot of kids don't like to be forced to sit and listen. in a classroom. This way, if they do see it in a classroom, but they have more questions, they can pick up their phone and listen to the podcast at any time. Like I said, our questions help provide students with an insight of training needed for the different careers and the day-to-day of what they could expect if that was their profession. And like I said, it's allowed parents and other members of the community to learn about what we really do offer here and what different opportunities are here for their students, or even if they're looking for a career change as well. So this can help your community in multiple different ways. Like I said, it could be aimed at students and residents to explore careers, but you could really do a podcast for any number of different reasons. One example that I came up with really quick was open jobs in the area. This would be something that you could easily highlight a different business that has openings that day or that week and go from there. It's inexpensive and generally does not take a ton of time to produce. Really within a week, I'd say I spend maybe an hour total with editing, recording, all of the different steps on our podcast episodes. And that is all I have, but I will be hosting a breakout session for anyone that would like to know more today at 12:45. Feel free to email me, feel free to call me. And I look forward to speaking with you. And with that, I will send it back to Chris.
Thanks, Emily. And I've had a couple of folks ask if the meeting is being recorded and if the breakout sessions will be recorded. The meeting is being recorded, and that'll be available on the CEDA YouTube channel after the meeting is done. And then also with some of the documents that you see from our presenters, like I mentioned, those will be available in the Whova app and on the web based platform on your computer for the next 6 months. And then we also have them. So if you can't find them, you can't access them, just let us know and we'll make sure that you get any of those documents that you would be interested in. Our next presentation is from Chris Hahn, who works in our Fillmore County and Spring Valley offices. And Chris's presentation this morning is on something that I think a lot of our communities have done, especially through the pandemic, but creating new valuable incentive programs that help encourage development and encourage projects. So with that, Chris, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Hopefully everyone can see my screen at this point. Good to go and everyone can hear me. Well, thank you for your time this morning, everybody. We're excited to share some of the work that we've been doing. And I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about creating valuable incentive programs that encourage economic and business development. I think the important thing to realize is that every community is unique and you need to embrace that. Just because one community did something doesn't mean it's the right fit for your community. One size does not fit all. You need a brand new stadium. Yeah, we have 600 people in our community. It's probably not the right opportunity. Maybe it is, I don't know. But it's okay. You often hear that this town did this and we want to be like this town. There's probably elements from that town that'll be helpful in building a program. But again, one size does not fit all. Focus on a custom tailored solution for your community. That's the one that's going to work the best. That's the one that's going to have the most value, and that's the one that's going to be sustainable because it's a custom tailored fit for your community. And again, other communities might have aspects of a program that work, so take those and use them, but don't feel that you have to replicate it. As a CEDA team member, I know I myself and a lot of other team members often get, hey, we want to do what this community did. Okay, well, and then we kind of explain what that community did and the why they did it to get to the how they did it. And there's some disconnect. So we built a program when I was in Grand Meadow that actually took parts of programs from Harmony, part of it from Casson, part of it from Chatfield. So we were able to build a successful program that we'll talk about in a little bit, but it was using component pieces from other communities. Take the time and qualify the needs of your community. Engage the organizations and leaders and make sure that the track you're on is the correct track. And really, when I say engage the community, I mean everybody that you can think of in the community. Talk to your chambers of commerce, talk to your business leaders, talk to your schools. There's, A lot of information comes from the feedback that the parents are giving to the schools. And if it's there and you're not asking for it, you may not be aware of it. Talk to the public library. A lot of people in rural Minnesota and rural areas still use the public library for everything, for internet to projects to paying utility bills, those types of things. So make sure you engage them as well. Commercial and recreational clubs. This can be anything, you know, commercial club, it can be the local snowmobile club, it can be a tavern league, it can be a local softball association. Reach out to them and say, hey, what's going well? What would you like to see? And just so you have that, because knowing what those needs are, you may come across a project that can satisfy or help satisfy those needs in the future. And if you know about them, you can maybe build it into something else. VFWs and Legions, again, a great resource. Make sure to engage your faith communities. Talk to the members of the different faith communities. Find out what they're hearing. Talk to those leaders. Talk to the people that attend those, that are part of those communities, and find out what their feedback is of what's going well, what can be improved, and get their feedback and their buy-in. This one's really, really important. Be strategic. Create programs that inform and facilitate multiple objectives. The old adage is to kill two birds with one stone. And I'm going to use the example of Spring Valley here, because this is a great example, I feel, of how this type of program can really work. The example I'm going to use is childcare. So we had some monies given to us from the Spring Valley Area Community Foundation, and it was about $3,000. And we said, we met as an EDA and we said, hey, what are the needs in our community? And childcare always seems to be a need. So we said, hey, let's make a childcare micro grant. And this was right at the start of COVID. And said, let's look at helping these people. We want them, you know, we can use it for COVID needs, but we're also going to build in programming. If some of these organizations or these childcare or home daycares want to do programming or curriculum updates, we want to help them with that. And the reason we did it this way is it assists the childcare business itself. The programming gives the children a head start with their social, physical, and academic development. It's critical for the families in these communities to have a job. If both parents work, the children have to go somewhere if they're not in school. So it helps the parents make a living and be at their job and those commitments. And if all of those three things work, that's an important factor for a supportive community that's attractive to people that want to relocate to that community. The reason I use this example is I said we had $3,000 initially set aside. So we created a grant and said there'll be 4 awards of $750 each. Well, we got 4 applications that were very, very strong. And at one of the EDA meetings, one of my members said, well, why don't we just fund them all at the max level? And just because the question was asked, why not? We were able to go into some funds the city had. The EDA approved it. The city council approved it. So we were able to fund all 4 of those grants at the max level, which was great because it helped all 4 of those businesses. The feedback was good. We got some good earned media out of it saying, hey, this is a pandemic, but these communities are doing these things to help their communities and move forward. So again, make sure you're strategic about how you build these programs and make sure they inform and facilitate other things if you can. Use the entire box of Legos. So Legos are great. If anyone's played with Legos, you know that there's hundreds and hundreds of different pieces, colors, sizes, shapes, functions, everything. As economic development professionals, we have a pretty big box of Legos. We have numerous resources that we can go to. Some of them just off the top are going to be your state and federal programs. Ron mentioned earlier in his opening about some deed grants that were awarded. There's federal grants right now for a lot of the people that were affected by COVID. Those are, you know, a solid go-to. Don't forget about your regional partners. Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation is one of our partners, and we appreciate that. And they do a great job with other types of grants, childcare being one of them that they facilitate. Private philanthropic foundations, Blandin comes to mind. There's other organizations that offer very specific grants and funding for specific types of programs. Your local community foundations, as I mentioned in the case of Spring Valley, we had a local community foundation that was able to kind of seed that program, and then we were able to match and exceed that on the back end. Municipal funds. The reason I mention this is in our communities, you definitely want to look for opportunities to help fund programs that you have. But one of the really important things for buy-in is to have the city behind it. So if the city has funding, one of 2 things will happen. they'll either be able to match it, or if you apply for a grant, oftentimes they may say, you have too much money, spend your own money before you come to us for the grant. So either way, when you build these programs, you have to evaluate what stake or how much of a stake that the municipality you're in has in the program, and make sure that you're using that. And then lastly, recruit human capital. Someone mentioned before, it's about relationships, and that is 110% accurate. Engage everybody, find the right people that have specializations in different things, ask them to be a part of the project. It's critically important to do that. So some of the important program components, once you've done those things, of course, make sure everyone knows the amount of money available, and make sure that everyone understands the details and the requirements and the purpose of the program. So this is the Grand Meadow Structure and Facade Improvement Forgivable Loan Program. And this is the one that I mentioned was built from component parts of different communities. The reason we did this project was because we had some commercial properties that were in a state of disrepair. Funding for remodels and businesses and startups is out there. Oftentimes funding for structural maintenance is not. And we're talking about things like the older brick buildings in our rural communities being tuck pointed, roofs leak, windows are falling out, those types of things. So we said, we're going to make this program for commercial businesses, commercial property, to specifically address that need in our community. As far as the application process, make sure people understand it. Make sure there's a checklist. Make sure that they understand how the project is approved and certified. Make sure they understand that this project will be a matter of public record, that it's public information about who applies and who gets this. Make sure they understand the deadlines and be very, very cautious about extending them for any reason. Not to say that there's not good reasons, but be cautious about that, as if you set a precedent, then in the future, of course, it's going to be a struggle to maintain that. Send out letters of awards and denials. If someone gets a letter, send out a congratulations letter. If someone does not get awarded, send it out, tell them they were not approved for this, and tell them why. State the intent of the program clearly. Eligible, expensive requirements, and be very specific about that. Here is a page from that application that says exactly what the funds are approved for, and what's not. And we also went in and said what's not approved. So again, here, any interior work would not be approved. So be specific on that and go from there. Spread the word. Communication is key. Relationships are critical. Communication is key. So develop a concise, informative message about your program and promote it. Press releases are still huge. I know that we live in a digital world, and these little electronic devices that we have that run our days are really important. But write a standard press release. Include the traditional media outlets in that. Send it to the newspapers. Send it to the radios. Earned media still reaches a lot of the non-digital stakeholders. I mean, if you have a newspaper, that's important. In the example of the Grand Meadow grant, we actually did a press release. It was picked up by the Austin Daily Herald. They did a feature story on it, and then they decided to come back and actually add that to their Progress 2021 magazine as a program in our area that was effective and as a model. So we appreciated that. Strategic placement of printed flyers, especially in rural communities, is still a big deal. You need to meet your stakeholders where they are. When we did the rural grants for Fillmore County, I actually drove around to every community in Fillmore County with a flyer with links on it and put them at the co-ops, the hardware stores, the grocery stores, the gas stations, the banks. You need to meet your audience where they are at. Social media is a great tool. I'm not bashing social media. If you use it, make sure that it's cross-platform and make sure that it includes the call to action and how to do that, where to go, provide the links and the resources. In-person outreach goes a long, long way. Again, it's about relationships. Make those phone calls. Talk to the leaders that you identified in the beginning and said, hey, here's what we're doing. Make you aware of this. Call me with questions. Make sure that people understand what's happening and check back with them. So again, in-person outreach goes a long, long way. Lastly, with any good program, I think you want to build in evaluation tools and methods. Most grant programs have a reporting requirement, which is critical to make sure that the work got done, to make sure the program's guidelines were met. As part of that, we also like to ask, what went well? Was it easy to apply? Was it hard to apply? What could have gone better? How can we do better? I spent 20 years in corporate sales and marketing, and that was always a question we had with our sponsors. Hey, what can we have done better to make this easier? And then ask why. Why do we think that was? Is it controllable? Is it not controllable? And then implement any of those steps to improve the program and the process in the future. So remember to share successes when possible, using the same methods that I outlined and spread the word. When you have a successful program, tell people about it, share it, get some of the people that were beneficiaries of the program to talk about it. We were lucky in Spring Valley to have one of the daycare providers do our CEDA regional development tour last year, and was part of the video for that. So she was more than happy to talk about that. But again, if you're doing these good things, spread the word. It can help other people. It can help those communities to ask, hey, what parts of this community's program can we replicate? Is it a good fit for us? So that's really all I have in the short time. But again, there's a breakout session at 1:15 this afternoon. It'll be pretty informal, just kind of come on the link and we'll talk about it, answer questions, talk about some ideas and go from there. So I appreciate everyone's time this morning and thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Back to you, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. One of the things that I have talked a lot about in my presentations is the fact that even in my time in this industry, which is only, like I said, the last 15, 16 years, I've seen the conversations change a lot. And what we talk about around economic development tables and community development tables has shifted a great deal. And so I think there are conversations happening in our communities. Some of the presentations you're hearing today are those types of conversations that haven't happened around those tables before. Up next for us is another one of those conversations that I think is unique to today's time in conversations around economic and community development tables, and the importance of engaging all aspects of your community and the changing aspects of your community. Shelgren Alkire, our staff person in the city of Lake City, has a presentation for you today called Staking Out Space about his work in helping support the Hispanic community in Lake City and engaging them in the work of making Lake City the best Lake City that it can be. So without further ado, I'd like you to welcome Shel.
Thanks a lot, boss. I hope that everybody can hear me all right. I've got this presentation, as Chris mentioned, and I want to sort of start by giving you the literal bird's eye view. Lake City is known for the way this thing looks. We talk a lot in our business about asset-based community development. And I am so very pleased and honored to be part of CEDA, an organization that really does asset-based community development with quality and integrity. I work in Lake City. I live in Lake City. My kids go to Lake City's public schools. Full disclosure, my wife's on city council. Man, we bleed orange and black, as I have been told many times. So with all the summer softball and baseball games, I'm hanging out and being here in lots of ways, meeting folks who are in our economy in lots of different fashions. And while economic development has definitely looked like this for Lake City for a number of years, occasionally we run into some problems, right? And some of the beauty and the reliability of our economy bumps into some weather. Sometimes it's choppy, and a couple years of beautiful weather is followed by a tornado that just happens to rip right downtown. Not a huge tornado, it was rather mild, but it did do a little damage to some sailboats. My job is to think about how to make sure that the boats go in the water, metaphorically speaking. Fortunately, I don't have to do it literally. We've got a harbor master in this town to do that, and he does it pretty brilliantly. But we want to make sure that things are wet, and hopefully not from sweat in the last couple of days. We've been plenty wet from sweat. We want to be wet from the lake. And I think lots of Minnesotans do this really brilliantly. And that sort of liquidity in our capital, in our community, in the relationships that we have with one another as neighbors, in the authentic connections. So much, we've already talked about this morning. Emily and Chris and Sarah have already captured so much of what we're about here in CEDA, and that intentionality, those relationships, and just sharing joy, building a community, literally learning how to build systems where we can pass the dollar internally, and so that multiplication factor that is so explicit in economic development is done pretty well. But under the surface of these moments, we have a changing demographic. And those of us who are paying attention to the numbers as they've been rolling out from census in the last 20, 30, 40 years, we know that the number of folks that are in our communities, in CEDA's service areas, but also just nationwide, we're increasingly brown, we are increasingly Spanish speaking, and we are increasingly diverse in many other ways. And our economy should serve everybody who's a resident in the communities that we look to lift up. And I believe that in this moment, as you're looking at these fancy boats, that when everybody does better, that all boats do rise with improvements. So based on the data that we know about, particularly a recent study coming from Minnesota's Chamber of Commerce, the statewide Chamber of Commerce, we know that Minnesota's immigrant communities, both in urban and rural communities, are incredibly important. And those immigrant communities are intrinsically related to our long-term vitality. And I wanted to break down from a high level, sort of almost as a policy level, some of the importance of that as it relates to our local economy. But I just want to say up front that I deeply believe that immigrants provide that considerable benefit to our economy and to this Star of the North state that we enjoy. I realize that not everybody that works for CEDA is a Minnesotan. We're definitely a company that is in many communities in multiple states. So hello, Cresco. But for the purposes of this demographic information, it is focused on Minnesota simply because it was done by the Chamber of Commerce in this state. Locally, we identified a need about two and a half years ago through Minnesota's Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, which was mentioned in a couple of previous presentations. Lake City has also participated in the REV program, just like Emily talked about. And one of the things that we've thought about through that program is how to build the capacity and encourage entrepreneurship among Lake City's Spanish-speaking residents. Lake City's a community of 5,100 people. We straddle a county line, and there's about 200, maybe 300 folks who live within our municipality who are explicitly Spanish speaking, whether they're folks that have immigrated here from Mexico or Guatemala. There's a community that is mostly a recent immigrant community, maybe sometimes in the last 20 years, but certainly in the last months. This lady, Katie Yoder, is a VISTA. VISTA is a program run by the federal government through the AmeriCorps program. And VISTA is a capacity building service year that is explicitly focused on combating poverty and advancing economic vitality all over the place in many ways. Katie Yoder is not at all from Minnesota. She's a brilliant 20-year-old professional who decided to land in Lake City through the VISTA program because she can speak Spanish and because she had a really awesome resume in community development. So about 2 years ago, she moved to Lake City. I am her supervisor, and I have apologized to her about that for every week for the last 2 years. And we're getting ready to wrap up her 2-year stint in Lake City, and she'll be heading off to graduate school for the fall semester in Massachusetts. But Katie's worked with the Hispanic community in a very intentional intentional way through the Lake City EDA office. And she's done a great job doing some research, doing some community support, schlepping folks to medical services up at the Care Clinic in Red Wing, connecting with immigrant services in Winona, connecting with legal aid for folks who are thinking about all kinds of complexities. She's done some projects for City Hall. She's done a bunch of outreach with the volunteer community here in Lake City that's supporting Spanish-speaking people, and she's been really connected to the library. Chris is right, libraries are important in rural Minnesota. Minnesota needs immigrants. Lake City needs immigrants. Without immigrants, our population is in decline. And I think that this state is really glad that we managed to hang on to the reps and the House of Representatives. We did it by the skin of our stiff upper lip. So, you know, censuses matter. And when you're in a place with declining numbers, it's an issue. So I want to just sort of make a case here quickly to simply say Minnesota is linked, any place in America is linked to a world economy because of our employees, because of entrepreneurs. And so this little teeny tiny town on the edge of the Mississippi River, on the wide spot in the river that we call Lake Pepin, has got this like international connection because folks from somewhere else have decided to move to this cute town. They maybe aren't the folks that have got a sailboat in the marina. They may be folks who are working really straightforward, hard labor jobs in agricultural or industrial positions, but they do connect us. And that connection, I think, is vitally important for our future. Maybe more importantly, those people are here. Those people are hardworking. They are deeply motivated. They care about their family. They care about their family's future. And they are by definition much more entrepreneurial in their impulse and inclination than folks like myself who were born in the United States. So I think it's important that we build systems that support immigrant entrepreneurs to connect our current and our long-term economic success patterns. This particular batch of words is a little long, but I would say simply that without intentionality, Lake City may have ignored the Spanish-speaking population that we have in our community. There are ways in every town, in every city, in every township, for folks who don't necessarily fit the mold to hide, right? It's easy when you don't feel like you're part of the whole to go to a comfortable and safe little sanctuary and build up some support networks and systems around you and be protective. I think everybody who's gone to junior high understands that reality. You know, when you're the kid that's got the lunch tray and you're leaving the lunch line and you're figuring out what table to sit at. That's the same moment for so many families. And it doesn't matter what language you speak, what ethnicity you connect to, or where you were born. That idea of being connected and being aware of the folks that have got your back, who are your neighbors, who are your friends, is so important when we're talking about building relationships, building businesses, building civic engagement, having meaningful connections between students and teachers in our schools. And so when we think about the way that folks hide, in order to protect themselves, in order to, you know, mitigate some of their own shyness, I think it's important that we reach out. We figure out how to use the skills and talents and human resources, maybe some of the capital that we have lying around in these municipalities that CEDA serves, and make sure that we are clear and welcoming and identify. Minnesota is amazing at being welcoming. I think it's fair to say that Minnesotans will give you directions to anywhere except their own house. So, you know, maybe we need to figure out how to give directions a little bit better. In the long run, our economy, our industries, our agriculture, our food manufacturing is not going to be as successful in Minnesota and in the upper Midwest without immigrants. And we know that if we improve the economic vitality of these particular families, our shared future is going to be a much, much brighter, much more vital place. So when I think about some of the stability that we have in this place, That blue line is, the sort of age range by nativity, right? The blue line is folks that have not been born anywhere else other than here. But we've got a lot of young people that are born in other places, that are working age, 25 to 44. This is true for Lake City. The folks that are moving here that are born outside of Minnesota, born outside of the United States, they're young, they're vital, they've got families, and they're looking to build their lives. And those foreign-born folks just continue to show up. The percentage of population in Minnesota that's born outside of the United States has been increasing for the last 40, 50 years, very consistently. And the reality is that the participation of those people in our labor force is only getting better. So as folks who are thinking about labor force, struggling to get jobs filled, making sure that all of the sort of pieces of the puzzle are fitting in and looking really great for those boats in the water and for the bottom lines of businesses, we want to think about this entrepreneurship and the education of folks that are born outside of the United States. There's obviously lots of politics around immigration, and I don't have any intention of diving into the complexity of immigration policy today. But I do want to advocate for folks who have come to Minnesota, come to Iowa, come to the upper Midwest, and have been very intentional about looking forward in a positive, productive way. They're doing things that we would define by definition as the American dream. And I think it's important that we honor that. In particular, I'm thinking in Lake City about folks that were born in Mexico and born in Guatemala, because those are the people that are here. And as we look at the last 20 years, from 2000 to 2020, 2018, the poverty rate of folks who are born outside of the United States is going down. And their workforce participation rate is going up significantly. Their median household income is stressed like all the rest of us. That's not particularly novel. But they're graduating kids from their community at a higher rate, and they're buying houses. And when I think about all of the markers, all of the indicators, all of the analytics that I look at every day in Lake City at this desk, these are the things that I get excited about. This is the future that makes me happy for my neighbors. And I think about these kids who literally are Lake City soccer team from the last couple of years. And I think about those faces, and I watch them play soccer. I watch them play baseball. I watch them play football. I watch the girls play volleyball, and I don't see much challenge. Those kids are a team. They're working together. And they are coachable. They are scoring. They're playing defense like none other. And their path, their road to success in this rural place is as obvious and as brilliant as it's always been for everybody who's been here for 100+ years. And I think that the German Lutherans that I'm married into, who has been raising those dairy cows out on County 15, just south of town, they're immigrants. They're just 3 or 4 generations a little bit further into the American dream. And my name, as you can see it here on the Zoom platform, it's got a KJ at the front end. My full first name is Shellgren. It was my grandmother's maiden name, and her maiden name is that Swedish immigrant name. They left Sweden to get away from Lutherans who they thought were stressing them out. And here I am in Lutheran country in Minnesota, surrounded by Germans and Scandinavians of all shapes and sizes, mostly round and lumpy. And we're looking at these skies just outside of Lake City. And what I see with a more complex workforce, a more complex labor force, I see a lot more beauty. And I see a future that has a vitality that I'm proud to be a part of.
That's awesome. Thanks, Shell. Well, I think it would be remiss of us to have our annual meeting for this past year and not talk about COVID-19 a little bit. We have a couple of our team members, Laura Qualley, who works with us in the city of Cannon Falls and in the city of Manorville, and Maddie Schwartz, who works with us in the city of Cold Spring. They're going to talk to you a little bit about some of the programs and some of the initiatives that our staff, kind of staff-wide, was a part of, created, worked with throughout this past year to help our communities through this unprecedented time. So without further ado, please help me welcome Laura and Maddie.
Good morning, everyone. Well, Maddie and I are the caboose of the presentation. So we're happy to be here and happy to be a part of the annual meeting this year. As Chris had mentioned, I am Laura Qualley and I work with the communities of Cannon Falls and Mantorville. And Maddie is with the community of Cold Spring. And we are the only co-presenters this year. So we're going to tag team this presentation. And like Chris said, we can't really do an annual meeting without talking about COVID-19. So can all of you see my screen? Can I get a head nod from Chris? Okay, good. All right, so I am the type of person that likes to eat my dessert before dinner. So I figure instead of waiting to the end of the presentation and showing you what kinds of impact our programs have last year, let's just start off with that right away. So last year, with the COVID-19 disbursement, the CEDA community, the impact that we had in our communities, we were able to help 22 city programs get their programs launched and dispersed. We also participated in 6 county programs, and those are the counties of Goodhue, Jackson, Houston, Faribault, Dodge, and Fillmore County. And the number of businesses and nonprofits that we're able to help was 1,233 businesses and nonprofits. And the total money that was allocated to these programs from whether it was from the local cities or it was from the county programs was a little over $7.4 million. So it was pretty exciting because it was like we were Ed McMahon and just got to give this money out, with any repercussions. And it was really exciting to be able to, we're the cheerleaders for our rural communities. And when we're getting emails and we're trying to figure out how can we help them keep their doors open, or if they're being ordered to shut, what can we do to help? And this was really a great opportunity that we had that we could do that. So with the dollars that were allocated, every program, every county, every city had a different type of structure and allotment as to what they were given and what they were distributing. But it averaged out to be about $6,000 per entity that we were able to help. So as you all are aware, there was a CARES Act program that was created, that was signed into law last March by President Trump. It was a $2.2 trillion program. And out of that, there were some federal programs that came out, and there was the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP loan. Any of you that are watching that maybe are in the financial industry probably never want to hear that term again. However, our businesses really were able to survive because of those programs. There was the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or the EIDL loan. There was Emergency Economic Injury Grant, which allotted $1,000 for every full-time employee up to a $10,000 cap. And then there was the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or the CRF fund, for local governments. And that's really where CEDA focused their energy in this past year. Now, Minnesota also had a couple programs that came out that were in addition to the CARES Act. So these were not CARES Act dollars, these were dollars that came directly from Minnesota. So Minnesota DEED had a small business emergency loan, or the SBEL, and that came out probably in late March, very early April is when they were accepting applications. Now I started April 1st, so talk about baptism by fire, but it was a great opportunity to be able to jump right in with both feet. Maddie started at the end of July of 2020. So then we hooked up with her, and then we moved forward with some of the other programming that we were able to facilitate. So CEDA's role with the Minnesota program is that we were hired as a fiscal agent for the funds. So we were really, the 44 businesses that we were able to, the applications were sent to us through DEED. We, as a team, each kind of had a couple different businesses that we were working for, collecting information, kind of being their their helper to get all the documents that were required by deed. And then there was a review committee and they determined if they were eligible, and if so, how much were they eligible for. The minimum request was $2,500 and the maximum was $35,000. So again, this was a loan, but there were terms in it that it's a 5-year loan. And after 18 months of repayment, 50% of that loan could be forgiven. So our role, again, through CEDA, we were able to, those 44 businesses that we helped around Minnesota, it was a little over $1 million that we were able to distribute. Now, most recently this year, there was also an executive order that was issued for Minnesota COVID-19 economic assistance package. And that was from January, the funds had to be allocated by March. And again, we were able to launch some, or get some of this money distributed to some of those businesses that were hit the hardest. So the bars, restaurants, wineries, breweries, some of the smaller event centers, or movie theaters, whatever. So that was what those dollars were used for. So the programs that CEDA supported, again, we participated in the small business emergency loans from April to May of last year. The CRF funds for local governments. So that was for the business relief programs. And the timeline on that was really tight. And Maddie's actually going to speak to that in a little bit about how we really leaned on each other to develop some of those programs so we could roll those dollars out before the deadline. And then the other thing, and then we can talk about this, our breakout session happens to be at 2:15 today. So if you want to hear some of the creative uses of some of the funds that were used, we'll expand on that a little bit. But cities also received some CARES dollars that they could use to help their community to respond to the pandemic, whether it was to purchase PPE, or they needed partitions, between them and, if they're a customer facing business, maybe they needed to expand their outdoor seating. So again, the city had all dollars that they could choose to allocate toward businesses, or plus they could also use it just to help their community respond. And then, like I just mentioned, the economic assistance package that just rolled out earlier this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Maddie, and she's going to tell you a little bit how we rolled out some of these programs. Maddie?
Great. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, so we are now going to give some of a background on the business relief grant administration in the counties with which we worked closely to help distribute funds. So our team worked closely with county administrators and staff to just determine specific details related to the program. For example, the maximum award amount that a business could be eligible for, and even the eligible business types as well. So we had to make sure that the grants highlighted county priorities and local needs. We also created, could you go back? Thanks. We created the grant applications and identified the supporting documentation that was needed to prove eligibility. Then we marketed the grants in the program area and were able to use both CEDA and county connections in communities to do this, to maximize awareness of the programs. And these were some of the ways that we promoted the program. So CEDA's direct relationships with local businesses often turned out to be a huge strength that we had in this process, especially in cities that CEDA already supports. So we were able to answer questions and explain the application process. This support seemed very helpful to the business owners who already were dealing with so many different things during the pandemic. And finally, we reviewed applications after the grant period closed, presented a report on the applications that we received to the county, and helped distribute funds. So although all of these grant programs were a little different, eligible uses specifically of the CARES Act grant funds for businesses included the following items. So for many small business owners who applied for grants, these funds were needed to continue operations, whether that was to pay rent, utility bills, pay their suppliers, pay costs associated with reopening, or adjust their operations. So businesses often needed to be able to have the supplies to distance customers and expand options for seating. Some businesses transitioned to take credit card payments or orders online, and any type of technology that helped businesses operate remotely. These funds helped businesses make those transitions. So throughout the grant process, these were some of the challenges that we encountered. There was a short turnaround to develop the programs, like Laura mentioned, and then to award the funds and allocate the funds. Because of this, we tried to develop programs that maybe encouraged applicants to apply a little quicker. For example, having grants where funds were awarded on a first come first served basis to encourage business owners to apply before the official deadline, things like that. We often had difficulties reaching closed businesses. So beyond calls and emails, sometimes we had a CEDA staff person go door to door with flyers or the physical application or where to go online, things like that. We often received more applications than funds that were available. And we often needed to follow up with businesses that had incomplete applications, so that we would be able to approve them and process applications in a timely manner. So that was another challenge. And then finally, not all of these programs were the same based on the county's priorities and needs that I mentioned earlier. Some programs excluded home-based businesses, nonprofits, or ag-related businesses, or some counties chose to limit funds to a specific sector of businesses, and then maximum grant awards differed as well. All right, so we were able to address challenges collaboratively due to many different factors. CEDA worked closely as a team and with different stakeholders involved to maximize the reach of these grants and to make sure that those who were eligible were able to apply. Again, collaboration and contact directly with local businesses was very important in this process. And due to internal collaboration, at CEDA and our experience with these programs, we were able to use components from other business grants administered in other CEDA communities to create new ones. So because of this, our team was able to work together to refine the applications and process over the course of multiple grants. And because of this, we were able to simplify the process, make the process to apply move a little smoother and faster. So CEDA was again able to share ideas from grants in different communities. So the silo mentality or reluctance to share information with employees in different communities or different divisions in the same company, it doesn't exist at CEDA. So this made our jobs and the process to allocate these grant funds much more efficient as well.
Thank you, Maddie. And so the other thing, like I'd mentioned earlier, is that, some of the dollars from the CARES funds were allocated to specific business relief that Maddie was just speaking about. But the other side of it was that, the cities also had their own bucket that they could use some of the funds to help their community respond to the pandemic. Now, not every single one of us in our communities, even though we all work in a different community, we may have a different role within our city government. And so some of us, maybe didn't have anything to do with allocating the expenditures of the city's bucket. I was the one that, kind of created the bucket, kind of helped them know what the guidelines were for Cannon Falls, for instance, as to how they could use some of those funds, and then kind of tracked it, kept the invoices, and then did the reporting to the MMB. So that was kind of stressful, honestly. But some of the cities, some cities rented tents for outdoor seating for their businesses, so that wasn't an expense that fell on the businesses. They may have been able to expand some broadband access. So we've talked, about the libraries a couple times in a few of our presentations today. And, some of our, some libraries, maybe received hotspots in service so that people could check those out from the libraries if they could do business or they could do their at-home learning or whatever it may be. There was hospital equipment that was purchased. There's, I know that there were some businesses were able to, whether they purchase gift cards from local businesses to help, just kind of have a stream of income coming in. It was cleaning supplies, safety supplies, technology in schools, some devices maybe for students that didn't have a device at home. There was also some long-term care facilities that needed some upgrades for technology when you think that they're cut off from their family, that now they needed some way to remote access so that they could have some interaction with their families. There was some that mental health and social services, those nonprofits also needed some extra assistance to try to help with, maybe it was doing some remote visits since they couldn't do in-person visits. Childcare providers also had to, turn their business model upside down as well. If they're an at-home business or if they are a center, they also had to try to figure out how are we going to space these kids out more. Maybe we need not to have so many community, a community bucket of crayons. Everyone needs to have their own box or whatever. But then there was also, maybe reimbursing some of the community education or some of the daycare centers that were offering free daycare for essential workers. So because they had to be at work, they were waiving their childcare fees, but it was about reimbursing those centers or those daycare providers so that they could continue to operate. So like I said, Maddie and I are going to be, we have our breakout session at 2:15. So we certainly hope that if you want to just hear about some of the other creative uses in some of our communities, or I know we sped through it kind of quickly, but we're here and we're excited that we were able to be a part of watching our businesses be able to keep their doors open during that uncertain time. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Laura and Maddie, for that great presentation of the work that has kept us very, very busy as a group, not just our CEDA team, but all of our communities as well for the last year. For my closing remarks, before I start, I want to say a very, very big thank you to one of our newest team members, Joy Rindles, our operations coordinator, who was integral in helping Joya and I get this meeting set up, again, using a new technology platform. She jumped right in, both feet, even being, like I said, relatively new to the chaos that is our daily lives at CEDA. And was an unbelievable help in getting this meeting put together and all of the information for all of you that are watching the meeting today, and making it as accessible as possible. So thank you very much, Joy. I did get a chat message that I forgot to introduce myself. I wish that I would have done that intentionally, because as you can tell from our presentations, even though I am a big dude, I am a very small part of an awesome team of amazing rock stars that are doing really, really cool things all over the place, across a few state lines, in Wisconsin and Iowa and all over different parts of Minnesota. And I am very pleased to be a part of that. My name is Chris Gassner. I'm the Senior Vice President. And today I get the opportunity to give a few closing remarks that Ron always tells me are too long, but I'll try and keep it brief because I want you to be able to go and brew that cup of cabin coffee for our breakout sessions, which will begin again right around 12:15. And you should have received several links to those breakout sessions, or several points of access to the links for those breakout sessions. And again, if you're having trouble finding them, please don't hesitate to send us a note or give us a call here at the offices, and we'll get you directed in the right way. Well, what a year, right? One of the things that we as an organization that I've gotten to be a part of, and I guess in this case had to be part of, is seeing our communities deal with different things over the years. from natural disasters like storms and fires and floods and things like that, and seeing communities, bounce back from those things and rebuild from those things has been extremely rewarding. Or, man-made stresses on those communities like plant closures or school consolidations and things like that, again, you see the communities come together and survive. And this was a first. This was something with COVID-19 and the pandemic that affected all of us, every community that we work in, every community that we touch, all of our staff, everybody at the exact same time. And that's unprecedented. And to see the stress of the unknown, and I think all of us in our daily lives strive to be prepared for anything that comes before us. And no matter what we would have done, I don't think we could have been prepared for what we've gone through. And there's, again, been a lot of stress, been a lot of heartache, been a lot of pain as a result of the pandemic. Been a lot of challenges as a result of the pandemic. But what I want to talk about today, and those of you that do know me or have known me for a long time know that I'm a silver linings kind of guy. And what I noticed, or what I'm taking away from the last 15 months in dealing with this pandemic, is the positive, or one of the positives that I've seen, is that our communities from top to bottom, from all over the place, have rallied to survive it. They have become more creative. They have become more utilized more ingenuity to survive a time that none of us were prepared for, but all faced. And I think that's amazing. We just heard Laura and Maddie talk about some of the programs that were created and some of the initiatives that were worked through to survive the pandemic in our rural communities and our metro communities. Again, we are all doing it. And I think that that's amazing. 2 years ago, when we had our meeting, I challenged everybody there. I challenged every community there to love their community, to love it as it is, or figure out what it needed to have happen in order to be the place that they loved. Last year, when we had this meeting, I thought we were challenged with enough. So I didn't have a challenge. This year, I have a challenge again, because I think we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the pandemic. My challenge this year is all of that creativity and all of that ingenuity that I've seen over the last 15 to 18 months that has allowed us, our communities, to survive the pandemic. I want us to harness it, and I want us to utilize it to not just survive anymore, but to thrive in the good times that are ahead of us. Again, I think, one of the things that I say in presentations a lot is that, the words creativity and government don't always fit together super well in the same sentence. But throughout this last year, I got to see it in action over and over and over again. And sometimes that creativity and ingenuity makes us a little uncomfortable, all of us, because we're working through uncharted waters, and that's scary. But as you saw from the presentations today, it's also awesome. And from Maddie and Laura's presentation that talks about some of the impact, monetarily and otherwise, on our business communities and on our residents, it's amazing. So now that I said the light at the end of the tunnel is in front of us, the other side of these struggles is in front of us. Now let's harness that energy that we've created, and let's thrive in the good times, and let's become even more creative and utilize even more ingenuity to take our communities to the next level and make them the best them that they can be. What that means for each of us is a little bit different. We talk about that all the time. We've talked about it in our presentations today. We know that as CEDA, every one of the communities that we work in and that we represent, or that we come into contact with, wants a little something different for themselves, and that's as it should be. But we have now seen that we can be creative. We have now seen, again, just as we have before, a resilience that maybe some of us didn't even expect to see. So with that, as we move forward from today, and we look forward to getting together in person in 2022 around a great venue and some more great presentations of cool things that are happening in our rural communities, where we can network and enjoy each other's company in person again next year. That's my challenge to you, is don't let the energy that we have spent in all that creativity that we have come up with and utilized over the last 15 months go to waste. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it rolling. Let's utilize the energy to become, to create even more things that we're going to celebrate next year and years beyond. Again, thank you to our team of rock stars for the awesome presentations today. Thank you for the sponsors that we have mentioned a couple of times that made this meeting possible and continue to make our work possible. Thank you to all the connections, all the folks that took time out of their day today to join us, to be a part of this conversation, to be engaged in this work in your communities and being the champions for your communities, to bring them forward into the post-pandemic age. I think we have some really exciting things ahead of us. So again, our breakout sessions will begin in about 15 to 20 minutes. I encourage you guys to participate in those. I know I've seen through the chat questions and things like that. People are very excited about the information that was presented, and it's another opportunity to get those questions answered directly from the presenters, and also engage with other communities and other stakeholders that are interested in the same thing. And maybe you're seeing something in your community that somebody else can benefit from, and vice versa. So with that, thank you again for your time. We appreciate your standing side by side with us in this work in our communities, and we look forward to seeing you in person next year. Be safe, and until then, have a great day.